one. Okay, and there we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Vagabond Dog Industry Chats. This is a friend of mine, a game developer, Joon. How are you doing, homie?
I'm all right. Yeah. How about you?
I'm okay. Let's see. Where do I begin describing you as a game developer?
I like this part. Yes, please flub a good introduction.
Well, I'll start by saying elusive. It's very hard to get a hold of you.
I will. Yeah, I'm gonna apologize for that at some point.
Don't worry about it.
But I'll let you finish first.
Elusive. And I don't know. I think you've got a sense of whimsy in the games that you've released thus far. Slightly experimental, but not abstract.
Ouch.
What?
Slightly experimental.
Slightly experimental.
I don't know.
No. Okay, because don't forget, there's like on the spectrum of experimental, you can go like completely unplayable. Like that's like if I were to say like a truly experimental game developer or a fully experimental game developer, I would say your games are completely unplayable, but they're not. I think they're very
pretty close, but yeah,
pretty close to unplayable. All right, we'll stick there. Yeah. I'd say innovative. Yeah. I'd say innovative is a good way to describe the games I've played. I went through your itch recently, leading up to this interview. I played one game I couldn't.
Did you buy Tractor Egg?
Yes, that was me. Enjoy my money.
Somebody bought. Yeah, I get so few people actually buying stuff on itch that I never bothered to turn off the notification because it's awesome. Somebody gives you like $2 for a free thing. It feels awesome.
Yeah.
And the thing you bought is Tractor Egg.
Yeah, I could not play that. It's a multiplayer game, right?
Yeah, so I embarrassingly enough lost the source of it.
Don't worry, we have projects like that.
It's just like that was what I had. Yeah, it's just what I had. I pushed to itch. It was playable on my computer.
All right, for the sake of my $2, can you explain how that game is supposed to work? Because I can't figure it out. I didn't read any of the instructions, but
it's a 4-player local multiplayer game I made at the Isolation Game Jam, which is on a sheep farm 2 hours out of Reykjavik, which is in Iceland. And a friend of mine, Johannes. Yeah, it's amazing. Robbie Fraser was there with me from Free Lives.
Yeah.
And so the thing that happens a lot in rural areas, I think most places in the world, but in Iceland specifically, tractors, they'll like mow the grass and then they'll put them in these like plastic like marshmallow things. Mm. And a friend of mine from Norway said that he always called them like tractor eggs. And it's kind of like tractor will like just take all this grass, make these things, and then literally like there's this machine and it just kind of like poops, like it has like a butthole and this like big like tractor egg comes out, and it's really fun to tell like really little kids like, oh, they're tractor eggs, like a chicken. And I was like basically just inspired by that. I wanted to make a game about them, and then the thing to do with them, you end up moving them around a lot if you're a farmer and you need the grass to be somewhere else. So it's like a whole process. There's like a whole like season where you're just moving these like big eggs around, and the game is about. I mean, you just drive around, and if you prick your like 2 prongs, because you have these little tractor guys, into an egg, you can like lift it a little bit, and then like you drive it into like the goal of the other player.
Of the other player.
That was.
I was trying to put it in my own. Oh, okay. Now I understand.
So that was so obvious to me, and turned out to be not obvious to anybody else. But that comes from like 3-player football. So it's basically like a football.
3-player.
I don't know if you've ever played.
No, I've not played. I've played.
3-team football is so superior to like boring 2-player or soccer football.
Okay.
It's far superior because like what like soccer barely has any of, like backstabbing and like ad hoc alliances. Like, hey, how about you and me, like try to beat this one sucker, but then right as we're at the goal, you left your goal open, so I'm gonna like backstab you and kick you. Yeah, it's a way more fun.
Soccer with politics.
Soccer exactly, and there's rarely any like stalemates or it's really good. Soccer Applause. Anyway, it came from we played that, I think, like the first day of the game jam, like outside or something. I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna make a game about that and Tractor Eggs. And then I lost the source code somehow.
It happens.
Thanks for buying Tractor Egg.
You know, we've got projects where we lost source code for it as well, and they will probably never be released unless it's at some point it's just better to remake the entire game anyway. Like,
yeah.
But so is that your process at game jams? I mean, we'll get into your other games in a bit, but I want to talk about the game jam process. Like, is that your process? Just like,
sure. What
the hell's going on right now? Like, what's inspiring me in the moment, and then go from that.
Yeah, I've never, I think, attended a game jam with a clear idea. Like, what I really like honestly, the thing if I'm good at anything, it's like I'm like 100% like an ideas guy. I have way too many of them, but I'm not completely worthless because I can actually build some of them. Like, I have a pretty good, at least for within the scope of like prototyping and like going from brainstorm to prototype, I have a pretty good like sense of what I can actually make, right? So like as soon as I was like, oh, we can do this with physics, blah, and then I'm just like gone, and I have just like fucking like 4-hour binge where now there's a game there. It's rarely any good, but at least I was able to convert this like brainstorm energy to like an actual thing. And that's honestly like one of my favorite parts of the process, is to just like sit and spin like just idea garbage until you see something that like, and sometimes it's not even about like the outcome, it's about like having fun making it. Like, you know, oh, it'd be so fun to draw this little guy and make him, I don't know, like, you know, make 100 of them chase after, I don't know, a ball, and I'll just make that. It usually ends up being there's a ball, there's 2 goals, and there's some terrible physics thing happening around it. But
that's such a good way of like bridging like there's a lot of people will have ideas, right, and then not necessarily be able to complete them. But if you like base your ideas around what you can already functionally do, then the ideas are significantly more feasible.
Right, because the I mean the one thing I feel like once you get to a certain level of like programming, I don't know a lot about programming. I still end up Googling stuff like, you know, I can't write a for loop without sort of like Googling C# for loop. Like, seriously, I'm 2 years into like a full-time Unity development project, and like I guess I'm using Writer as an editor, and it auto completes it.
Yeah.
But it's more like like it's not really about the code or anything. It's more about like understanding what's possible, and then understanding that like, okay, I can do this in a reasonable amount of time. And I think it's actually the most like valuable thing about game jams that I've learned, is that you end up learning so much about like, the one time I did a game jam and I wanted to do something with like spring joints, and that just like 4 hours in I had nothing. And then you just learn that like, and it's partially about like, I didn't know anything about spring joints when I started, but it's also partially because that's like an inherently complex thing to fine tune. Like, people who make physics games will spend weeks, you know, if not like the duration of the process, their entire development of the game, tweaking physics variables. Like, doing something quickly fun with physics can be really hard. And that's like a really valuable thing to learn as well.
Yeah, so it's like almost worthwhile having these like sort of like sacrificial micro projects, because that's what the other question I was gonna ask. Well, okay, so if you're like framing your ideas around what I already know, how did you ever learn anything new, right? And is it just that like, is that process of these like small sacrificial projects where you're like,
well, the thing is often like you can see a path there, but that doesn't mean you know everything. So that's when you start exactly like, you know, often the first thing is you go on like a Google sort of like sanity check of a bunch of ideas. You start looking into like, oh, can I do this? You know, if you can identify some of the pain points, you can figure that out. And if not, that's the first thing you want to prototype. Like, actually, the game I'm working on now for the last 2 years, Nuts, came together at a game jam from like a couple of different ideas that I had, and some were completely untested. And one of them was I had only recently learned about Unity fog, about like distance fog as a concept, of like if you have a first-person game, you probably don't want to be able to look infinitely in any direction, just because that creates like a bunch of really insane like rendering problems. So almost every like 3D game has like fog. And it's like, oh, that's really cool, but it's almost always like, if it's in a horror game, it's black, and in non-horror games, if it's like daytime and you're outside, it's like white or blue or something. And I was like, what if it's like some crazy other color? What does that feel like?
Right.
And it was literally like the start of like what ended up being a 2-year journey. Was just me being like, huh, what if it's yellow? And you just have a yellow world. It's like, oh, I want like a first-person controller. Found one, dropped it in. I'm still using like a free first-person controller that I've now probably completely, gutted and rewritten. And then the other like sort of aha moment was like, okay, that I've also recently seen like this outline shader thing. Found an example there, and it's like, what if the outline is the color of the fog? And that became like the entire aesthetic of this game. And yeah, and like I didn't know how to do outline shading. Honestly, like the Unity Asset Store makes a lot of this like stuff. Like you can cover ground more easily. It absolutely will bite you in the ass. You will inevitably, when you do like a real production, you have to learn how that stuff actually works at the back end. But it's really fun to just like throw a bunch of ideas together that way.
Yes.
So that's part of my process.
For those who haven't seen Ian's Nuts yet, the game or the jam version I've played, it's it is I guess like a bright Technicolor kind of like filter over a first-person forest. You have 3 cameras on tripods that you can position around in the forest, and then this like sort of like station where there's these TVs and a chair, and you have like in the daytime you like can move the cameras around, and then at night you sit down and you watch the TVs at night, and it plays back the cameras, and there's a squirrel that like runs down out of the tree, and then it like goes to another tree. It climbs up the tree, and you're trying to like sort of figure out where that squirrel is going, or find that tree that the squirrel is going to. And you do that by like setting up the cameras in strategic positions to like follow the movement, and then you see like, oh, okay, the squirrel's gone like this way, I need to like move the camera here and then like place this one here to kind of like capture its movement. It's like you get into this thought process of like trying to follow something that you can't like see, and you get like really comfortable with the space and like get strategic with it. And that's the experience as I've known it. Now you've, I assume, done a lot of extra stuff to it, because the trailer looks way crazier than the jam game. So I'm curious how it's evolved.
The thing that happened, like that jam game was literally made in like 12 hours or something, because I remember my girlfriend got really sick. She drew like 2 textures and then got the flu, and we basically had to bail, and I just like showed up on Sunday just to like present. So it was kind of like, it was such a like, tiny thing, but it was so neatly focused, and honestly like there's no methodology that like that process is not repeatable even for me, you know what I mean? Like that was just like so much chance and so much just like random, like I had this like I had done like an experiment at another jam kind of where you have a physical camera in a game that records other stuff, but it was like totally abstract, so it wasn't about like recording something in motion, it wasn't about but I just had that, and like had a couple of building bricks. But yeah, anyway, at the end of that, like I posted it at the end of the jam, worked on it for like another week, just like fixed a few bugs. And then like out of nowhere, like Kotaku made like a let's play of it. Like literally a journalist at like Peter Alexander, who at the time was the journalist for Kotaku, just made like a review like of my game jam game.
Right.
And like didn't even address the fact that or barely addressed the fact that it was a game jam game, and talked about like this kind of created this like promise. Like she literally said the words like hills and glades, like, as you traverse the hills and glades of the forest. And I was like, Man, that was like a Unity terrain, and I just took the brush and just went like whoop 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 whoop, just to like have a little bit of like, you know, hills in it, and it's kind of like, and I started. It was literally because of people's reaction, because there was a bunch of like, you know, it got a lot of people playing on it as well and commenting and even like donating, which is just that just feels great when people do that. Just created this like promise of like this could be like a full game, like the, you know, there's so many stones left unturned in this design. Like, what if there's different types of forests, different types of squirrels, different types of cameras? And that was, I started just building a pitch of that, because it was actually, that was just at the beginning of the own trip. So I had a job already, I had a project. So I decided to just focus on try to get this off the ground. Like, you have effectively like a demo, show it to everyone, show it to publishers and platforms until, you know, somebody takes it. And it took a year, and it was almost entirely like business development work. Like, I didn't make another prototype. I basically got the game fully funded based off of that like 12-hour game jam project, and then like probably 300 hours of like PowerPointing and, you know, Skype meetings and whatever, and, you know, actually going to GDC and stuff. But still, yeah, that was pretty cool. So just like it was such a good seed for like a larger game. I totally didn't answer your question, but I can talk about what's in the new game if you want as well.
Yeah, we'll get there. I guess. So this is the second guest I've had on that has specifically mentioned that like a Kotaku article in particular has propelled a game from like game jam status to you know, actual project happenings. But find, what I find more interesting about your case is that the fantasy projected by the journalist onto the game. Do you think where does that come from? Like, is that just like people are so hungry for like first person experience? I think we all love first person experiences because it's like so easily like connectable to as a human who experiences life in first person, but like craving non-action first-person shooters or different first-person shooters, like not shooters, first-person experiences.
It's, I've had the same problem. Like, you call it FPS game, but it's for photography.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that like is that something that you've seen like reflected it through, like you've been in this first person experience genre for a couple years now working on this? Like, is that something that you see reflected in the masses? Like, is that something people actually are craving?
So the a part of the thing I did when like just trying to figure out like, you know, will anybody want to play this game, do I want to make this game, was like there are not there's quite a lot of like well-made first-person narrative games that do really, really well, but they also have to be really polished.
Right.
And I'm talking about like Portal, Firewatch, Dear Esther is like purely like there's going all the way from like walking simulators to like one step, you know, like maybe not exactly Half-Life because that's like actually a shooter, but like the level design. Portal is kind of like, what if we take the sort of level design craft and world building craft from Half-Life, but like add a completely different mechanic that isn't shooting to it. And there's definitely been like a lot of games in like trying to get there. There's just, it feels like there's this like upper layer of like extremely successful games, and then a lower layer of games that I would look at and smugly say, okay, I can do better than that.
Right.
That feels like, right. Like, while I feel like for other genres, you have like a full spectrum, and like the like kind of, you know, low-hanging fruit, not super impressive or not particularly successful, even though it's well-made stuff. And then there's the like really high-end stuff. And there is also that middle. There's also just kind of like people who just like make, you know, they make enough money to make another game, and that's really, you know, all the thing that matters to most people.
Right.
But in this like first-person narrative, like a little bit puzzly, a little bit quirky core mechanic genre, I feel like there's either like pretty big successes and critical acclaim, or you've never heard about them. But also, if you look pretty closely at them, you can kind of try to figure out why.
Right. Yeah.
But
I find with like a lot of it's because it's like with a first person, like it's really easy, especially with the asset store and everything, to just like get a first person walking simulator like off the ground right away, and then the rest is just like you know, if you slap a couple environments together and call it a day, like you can ship that game. But it doesn't it's like you said, it's not going to go over the top.
No, exactly. And I focused very hard at like, I kind of got obsessed with this, like trying to figure out like what do people actually like about these games, and why is it so different working in first person than any other perspective. And really the thing that I think now is that like a really cool thing about first person games, like the reason they match so well with storytelling and not need necessarily even mechanics, because just moving through the space, you have so much expression. Just deciding where to look, how to move, is so much more expressive than if it's like more of an isometric. You just click and your guy just like does the one walk animation to that point, and he's just standing there now, but your screen didn't change fully. Right. Like, you know, you maybe it scrolled a little bit, you see a little bit more of the map or whatever. But if you're in first person, you literally can have these experiences of like, there's a narrow doorway, and I get a little bit of a picture of what's behind it, but only once I go through it will I get the vista, or will I be treated to, you know, even in third person over the shoulder, usually games tilt down way more. So you see what's around the character, and for like fighting games, like melee fighting or whatever, that's really important. I'm thinking about like Breath of the Wild, for example. But Breath of the Wild does a bunch of like really interesting things with like occasionally, you know, it gives you free range of the camera, first of all.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, the act of looking is like an expressive and like player creative act, I would say, that is just like hard to think about, or that isn't obvious to everybody. That I think like that's why walking simulators work really well in first person, work well in any other sort of control scheme or genre. I just think there's something compelling about it. At the same time, they're also like one of the least accessible to people who don't have any video game literacy. Like because Nuts has this like art style, which is definitely like inspired by a lot of like non-video game art as well. And I showed it at an art show here of like just like local kind of experimental artists, and nobody could like play any, could like, it was literally give a controller to somebody and the camera, they just like look with the camera to the ground and are just like stuck, and they're just like, oh cool, it's like yellow, I like it, and then they just give the controller back, and you're like, no, like there's so much, like what? And literally, you know, like I was like, no, the right stick is to look and the left stick is to move, and they're like, oh yeah. So
yeah, it's a
double-edged sword.
I forget there are those people out there that are not like we're so stuck in video game land that like it's very easy to forget that there's the people who can't even handle the two-stick thing.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I think that's part of the reason why I think I never made first-person games before, is because like it is, you know, you test a lot with your friends who aren't game developers. So I did in the beginning, or even with like family and stuff. And first-person games are just so inaccessible. Like when I first like discovered indie games and stuff, I like I have a pretty good relationship with my parents, and they came to visit me where I was studying, and I just really wanted to show them some of this stuff. And I like dragged my dad through Proteus. It literally took like more than an hour before he could just like walk on his own. Like literally I had to teach him how to walk in Proteus, and it's like so slow, and there's really nothing you can fuck up.
It's interesting because like I think, like I mean, inevitably we're moving into first person VR experiences, and I think a lot of that like controller difficulty gets really mitigated there, which is exciting. But the for the meantime, I don't know what like solution is for that, or if it's even worth finding a solution. Like obviously there's enough players and there's enough young people that know how to play these things already, and like we don't really need to like focus too hard on like finding a solution for it.
But it is something I think about sometimes, of like video games are very much always building on top of themselves, and like there's a big part of the generation today that plays first person games. Oh, hello.
Hey, kitty cat. He's a good boy.
A big part of the people who play these first person games, I suspect, have partially grown up with the evolution of that, of like, have probably played a Doom or a Quake, like of the early ones, maybe. Or at least it's hard for me to relate to people who didn't go through that like literal, like, hey, first person games don't exist or barely exist, or are like Wolfenstein-y, where you can control them with a keyboard. Like I remember the first first-person shooter game I played, like really got into, was Duke Nukem 3D. Didn't even have mouse look. Like it was just keyboard. And like I remember that evolution, so that's how I learned these things. But how do people today who don't have that experience learn? I mean, I guess it's not that hard, but it is really hard when you actually find an adult person who doesn't have that literacy to like, what do you make them play that's like a good... I thought Proteus was like accessible, but it isn't. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, it's I mean, but again, it's not... I think it's something that you don't... I think when you're a kid and you want to learn how to play games, you just put in the time to like figure it out.
You will, yeah.
Right.
So much time as a kid. Oh.
Right.
Oh, to have the kid time again.
Never again. It's over. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's an interesting place to be in.
Not to alarm you, but there was somebody in your house.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
That's okay. Bye.
There they are again.
Just my wife. What was I gonna say? So I think another reason why you're seeing this like hard division between like super successful walking simulators for first person experiences and like a dearth of not so great ones is that we are also past, I think, the genre bubble, right? Like that genre bubble, like I want to say 2013 through 2015, when like Dear Esther was like fresh and Proteus were fresh games, and we've with every bubble comes a whole bunch of like, Me Too projects that like, get the idea of it, but not necessarily the soul or whatever. And I think we're like,
not necessarily clones, but yeah.
Right. They're like, oh, I can do this. Let's go. But I think we're like far enough past that bubble now where like a lot of the titles that we're using as examples like have a strong survivorship bias, right? They're already successful over the course of almost a decade now. And so it's like, what is the space for these games like today? And how is that against, I guess, I mean, like if you want to look at any, like we went through, we finished the Battle Royale bubble, and now we're into the Werewolf Among Us style bubble.
That's the other thing, is that these, like a good, well-received narrative first-person game, I feel is like pretty timeless. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like people are excited about like it coming out to new platforms. It's like I remember the first time somebody compared, I think it was Beginner's Guide, Davey Reedon's Beginner Guide, to a movie, and it made so much sense because it's literally, it's like a pretty linear 2 to 2.5 hour experience, and like a good movie you want to watch again like a few years later, right? Yeah. Like you really want to just have that experience again, and it gives you the confidence. Like one of the huge problems I think with video games and their sort of place in culture is that like time length is so variable. Like a movie you can have with some degree of confidence be like, it's 2 hours of my life, I can sit for 2 hours. I could take like one break in the middle or something, make some popcorn. That's a good time, right? Like I could have a whole range of different emotions,
Right.
but my like state, my physical state is going to be the same. While a video game can be like 2 minutes or whatever to, 200 hours. And nobody can, like in many cases in like non-linear video, like a roguelike or whatever, you can't say how many hours you're going to be engaged by that, or how many hours you should play it. Like refinding, like I have a Nuclear Throne addiction, like probably several hundreds and hundreds of hours, and I often like want to play it and then start, and then 2 minutes in I'm like, oh, actually I can't do this right now. Like,
Yeah.
well, like it's super hard to like predict what mindset you're gonna be in while doing this. While I feel with this type of more like narrative first person adventure games, you have a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like, in the way that you have a pretty good idea of what watching a movie is going to be like.
Yeah, I can definitely.
And therefore, I think are a bit timeless. But yeah.
Like we just released a game called Karen, an outrage simulator, and like
yes,
one of the things I learned. So like I don't know if you've seen the Teenage Blob game from Team Laserbeam, but they like very on the cover sort of like say this is how long the game is, like it's 30-45 minutes or whatever, and like expect that, and like that made it like really easy to jump into and like really easy to enjoy.
Absolutely.
And like we knew we had a short experience with Karen, and we like put that like timestamp, like is on the features list, and we found like people are just like willing to like commit. They're like, yeah, I can commit to a half an hour, whereas like an indeterminate or like 60 hours is like a really big commitment, and it feels like work turning on the game, and then other ones where it's like, you will play this forever, we will update it until you die, and then that's like, okay, well, I guess this is a lifestyle change now, not necessarily just a piece of content.
Exactly. Some video games are a lifestyle, but I think the ones that I find the most lasting, besides Nuclear Throne, are often the ones that are like, like finishing a video game is an interesting experience, if there's any level of skill involved, or just thinking, like puzzle games, you remember, good stories, and you remember, especially in first-person games, you have memories of walking through spaces. Right, like in other games, I feel like you have memories of like having seen an area, and like some games, sure, they require you to build like a mental model of like, after playing a run of random example, but like Binding of Isaac, or like a Zelda game, you that map lives in your head, right? But in a first-person game, you literally have this experience of like, I was standing there, the door opened, was a monster, or this train passed by me on the left. Like you have so much more presence.
As you're talking about memory, I'm thinking about dreams, and whether or not.
All right.
Like, I've definitely had dreams about games I've played, but I'm trying to like. I mean, it's so hard to remember my dreams long term now, but like I'm trying to think if like first-person games are more likely to infect my dreams because of the perspective and like the similarity to actual life.
Yeah, I mean, you must have had, like, VR must be at such a much higher level for you, having spent as much time in it as you have.
Right.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the project you did at Amaze was like hours at a time.
Yeah. Like days on end. It's like it does affect, it does, but it's weird. Like, it doesn't like it's the thing. Like, dreams are like your brain is sorting out like the happening of the now, right? And it doesn't like come up so frequently anymore, but like at the time it definitely does.
I've never spent like I remember Torsten, the organizer of the Amaze Festival, did this VR project like really early on. I think it was like just with like the first 5 or whatever in like one of the first 2 years. It's called Disconnected, I think, and he was in VR for 48 hours, which was at the time a record. I don't know if it still is, probably not. But also the like level of content that was there at the time was not very high. So he basically played a lot of these like 5-minute games just like over and over and over again. And he had like a VR shaman who like put on, just took him from experience to experience. And he like at some point after like 20 hours built like a house in tilt brush, and just like went to sleep wearing the goggles, and it was crazy. And I talked to him afterwards, and he said like he has like flashbacks in the way that you have from doing. I mean, and not from personal experience, but people talk about like when they've done a bunch of like psychedelics or whatever, they can have like kind of flashbacks, or memories, dreams, daydreams, or whatever that take them back to some of the places that they visited while they were under the influence. And he says like I've had that a couple times of like to some of the things I experienced in VR. Like I just get, whoa, yeah, wow, that's Anyway, I think it can happen to like first person games, like probably more likely than. Although there's also what you get with like more abstract things is like the Tetris effect, right? Like I definitely have, if I'm like in a Nuclear Throne binge period, usually the first couple days, I'll have nights where I'm like playing while like trying to fall asleep or just waking up or whatever. Like so like semi-lucid, I'm like flowing through the levels, killing bandits.
Do you have dreams where the perspective keeps rotating left and right and left and right and left and right and left and right?
Yes. I was wondering if it was the feat that you still had. Yes, wow, I wonder. Amazing. I don't think I ever had Don't Trip dreams. If I did, it was probably about like big shoes like stepping on me. So, yeah, good that you still have them.
Yeah, for those that don't know, you made a game called Don't Trip for mobile, where you hold your phone like that, and then you have to like walk, like it's hard. You have to like put your thumb down, place your foot, and then pivot the other one. Very, very like innovative like control scheme, and like I'd never played anything quite like it, and fascinating experience. What's that process like for you? I've never made a mobile focused game. I've never like had to deal with the like physicality of players like handling controls and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. What was that process like?
So the idea also came from a game jam actually. Okay. Inspired by somebody who had like an even crazier idea where somebody had made a game with like a ragdoll character standing in like a pretty open space that needed to get to a certain destination, and there was like a image of a keyboard imprinted on the ground, like projected onto the ground. Okay. And if you press the button, the ragdoll character would try to stand on the letter. So if you press the D, he would like move his left foot to the D. And you press the L, he would move his right foot to the L and be like spread out and sort of like almost fall over. And then if you only held one key and moved the mouse, it would spin the keyboard over the ground, and the ragdoll would kind of like try to resolve that and sort of like really like drunkenly walk through the world. It was unplayable, but it gave me this idea of like, what if you could like pivot, a thing? Yeah, like kind of. When you think about it, that is how you walk, right? Like you kind of like it's, or you can walk that way. It's kind of like how you silly walk as a kid sometimes. Like you like if you walk with stiff legs, that's kind of how you walk, right? Like you put one down, then you like spin your whole body, put it a little bit forward. Got me thinking. I tested it out. I remember the first prototype I made was just like 2 pictures of feet on a world map, because I wanted to see like, can I actually like meaningfully navigate this? So I made like a large world map, and I just like started off in Denmark and was like, okay, went up to a friend and was like, okay, name a country, and they were like, Australia, and I would just like try to walk through Australia on like a probably like 400 by 300 pixel map of the world texture that I like scaled. So just like, whoa. But I quickly figured out like, okay, this works. Like I can actually decide where to go and go there with like some level of certainty. Fast forward to having like a more playable prototype, showing it to a publisher at GDC, Noodle Cake. They really, really liked it. They were like, this is so bonkers. Like we have to publish this. And they gave me enough runway to work on it for 6 months, which became 9 months. and the first thing I basically had to do was just like learn a lot about like the limitations of like gyro and magnetism, and even like briefly looked into AR because people were like, oh, it is kind of just around the AR boom, like AR kit on phones started coming out, so like a lot of people were making demos and games that are like look through your phone into the real world, right? So like, wow, what if the junk in the game is my real junk in my house,
right.
And that like sounds like that's a cool promise, but like I just couldn't connect those dots. Like that's, you know, how would that work?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily make a better game.
No, what I feel like Don't Trip does, like what makes this input thing so crazy is that like it's actually really granular, like it's really precise, and it feels like it wouldn't be so precise. Like it
Right.
could, you know, like how does it do that, especially on like a relatively high-end phone? It feels amazing, and that was like enough for me to like really want to make this. I was like, oh, people are just gonna like be so like the novelty value is so high, and I just want to like make people do that to their phone, and it's gonna just go viral, hopefully, like maybe not, but and then I just kind of adopted like mobile game patterns. So they obviously had to be a mobile game because you can only do this on a phone. So I just looked at like mobile games, and I think with like really biased sort of like I looked like at mobile games that I actually liked like this, and I was like, oh, this mobile game. I looked a lot at like Crossy Road, for example, which at the time was already like 3 or 4 years old, which is the worst thing if you're gonna steal ideas from people in video game business. Don't look at anything that's like more than 6 months old,
right.
Because everything rolls over. And also, yeah, like survivorship bias, like success bias, like it's not necessarily because of any one thing that game did that it got successful. For all I know, it could have been marketing. So like stealing like business patterns and whatever from other games is a bad time, but I did it.
Yeah. At the same time, we don't have any other examples to go off of. Like, it's either you're like staring and like still guessing who's going to be successful in the now and copying them, or like looking at old data and like trying to project from that. Like there's it's always guesswork, and everybody who says otherwise is lying.
No, absolutely. Like nothing is certain, and that was my thing as well. It's kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna do this like kind of the status quo or the industry standard of like there'll be 10 levels. They're, you know, unlockable. There's a bunch of goals and missions, and there's like incentivized ads, and I just did all of those things in the hopes that some of them would work. We would get some data, we could maybe iterate on it, and like you give people like a reason to play. Because in so many mobile games that I played at the time and was playing, honestly the incentive was just like I just want to see more stuff, right? Like I played this, I get a bunch of stars. With those stars, I get to buy a different level, or I get to buy a different avatar. I get to shoot bubblegum out of my ass, and like that's cool. Like I want that. Like I enjoy the core activity, like a jetpack joyride. I enjoy just like flying around, boop boop, get some coins, and then you're like, oh cool, if I do this like 2 more times, I get to literally shoot bubblegum out of my ass. That's fun. You know, like it's not, I don't actually care about it, but it just gives me just enough reason to like play X amount of time of it.
The avoiding paying into games that are like that almost becomes the game itself. I find like it's very it depends. There's a couple different types of people who play games, right? But like the sort I am, it's like if I'm presented with here's a thing you can like unlock with X amount of play, or you can pay for it, right? Like then it's like, ooh, I want to get it via play every single time, because it's
exactly. Like, so, and that's where like a lot of like the ad stuff comes in. You're sort of like those things are pretty well documented. That there's kind of there's people who will just like buy things that look cool, like throw money at them, and then there's people who like never buy anything, and so you kind of like create 2 alternate roads of like. Basically, as soon as somebody's paid like $2 or $3, you don't even care about ads anymore. Right. You just like stop showing them ads and be like, "Oh, cool! Thanks for buying stuff. Do you want to buy more stuff?" And if people like haven't bought anything after playing for like 10 minutes, they're probably never gonna buy anything. And then you can just kind of start showing them a little bit more ads because you know that they're just like kind of playing for free, and like they might even like the ad systems where, you know, sometimes you can double your coins by watching an ad and all that stuff. And yeah, I did all of the stuff, like everything that looked like a remotely good idea was implemented, and I tried to keep it within both like my ethical limits and reason, and like without like handicapping the game design too much or something, right? There's no gates in there. There's nothing that's like really preventing you from progressing or whatever. But the really sad reality of Don't Trip is that people love the novelty. Like it hit that like virality a couple times. Like it was front page of Imgur. It has, I think, probably close to 1 million downloads on iOS and Android. But literally, like the average people play for like 1 to 2 minutes and then never open it again. Like, oh, cool! Like, this is a cool thing I can do with my phone now. And like 1 or 2 minutes is when like ads kick in and stuff. Like that's when all the other systems kick in, and you can't front load that more. Like 1 or 2 minutes is honestly for most people that's the tutorial. So people were just like, yeah, the novelty worked, but like there wasn't anything more. So if I would do it again, I would probably like it was 1 month of game design and 8 months of content generation. I would have just made 9 games that have 1 level rather than try to just like, you know, I just didn't prove to a high enough degree that this core activity is fun, right? Like if I make people playtest and they give me the phone back after 2 minutes, unless I asked them to do something specific, that should have been a bit of a red flag. And that was one of the things that was so promising, like doing Nuts right after, because that Game Jam game that I made in 12 hours, people made YouTube videos that were 45 minutes long.
Right.
It's like, what? Like people want to do this for that long? That's crazy. And really encouraging, because like that feels like that was like the biggest flaw in my previous project is already solved in the next project, and you know, some level of confidence that I can generate content around it, as I did for Don't Trip. But like getting that core stuff to feel good was, yeah, I just underestimated it, honestly. Like there's not a single person who looks at Don't Trip and isn't like somewhat impressed by the novelty in all of the tests I've done. But also, you are one of the like 5 people I can name that actually like played more than 10 minutes of the game.
Really?
Voluntarily.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's
which I appreciate. It's awesome that somebody got to see all the stuff I made, because there's a lot of stuff in there. Oh man. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, because I mean it's. I don't. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess you've got a lot more like, you know, post release experience, like on understanding how people play it and everything like that. But I wonder how.
Yeah.
If that's just mobile games or.
It was. Yeah, it's really hard to say. Like even if you have all the data, it's super hard to make like a conclusive. This is the reason this game wasn't super successful. At the end of it, I don't really know, but like the thing that definitely would have saved it if I had focused more on figuring out what people actually want to do after the novelty wears off. Because novelty wears off pretty quickly. It's like I was just reading your reviews of Karen as I was downloading it on Steam while I was waiting for you. And people are saying that kind of like, I expected this to be just like a haha, there's like 2 good jokes in there. And then they're like, but actually, I'm like, you know, an hour in, and it's still pretty funny. And that's the thing my game doesn't have. Like, it has like a pull. Like, there is a great like novel interaction in there, but then it doesn't follow up with like mechanics that interact with that. It doesn't follow up with like a second aha moment. It's just a one thing. It's literally do this to your phone. Awesome. It's like,
right.
You know.
I mean, like you did add it, like, and there were later levels that had like more things to avoid in different like, and then you remember you added the presence stepping on that. But I mean, it is at the same time like all based in that one mechanic, which I guess I can understand your.
Yeah, and it's a weird like, and that was my connection to Crossy Road. Crossy Road is literally just about like, you know, when it's almost a 1-button game, like you can occasionally move left and right, so like all of the challenges there are timing kind of and a tiny bit of navigation, and I was kind of like, that's kind of what I have, right? Like you you want to. It's kind of obvious where you have to step. You step where things aren't, but then occasionally you need to think about timing because like the Roombas are kind of like, are kind of like the cars in Crossy Road, right? And the challenge there is just kind of like trajectory planning in your head of like, okay, this thing is coming in. I need to not step, I need to wait for it to pass or be quick. And that works in Crossy Roads for like 100 hours for some people, and like just collecting all the different like characters that aren't even that different. And I just misread, I think, the pattern or misapplied. Like it was a flawed analogy that I still don't fully understand why it's that flawed, but it is. I think yes, it's novel and appealing to do it, but it also creates a huge amount of clunk. Like you can't do this on the toilet. Nobody does this in the line at the post office, and that is when people play mobile games. I think I get my charger. I'll be right back.
Sure. Yeah. If you've got an iOS device, I do highly recommend downloading Don't Trip. Let me get you guys the link for it. And actually, while I'm at it, I'll get you the link for Nuts as well. Don't die. I think we're good. You're here. Here. This is the link for Nuts.
Yes.
And so I tried to find Don't Trip again for my new phone, and it's not on the Google Play Store anymore, is it?
No, Google did the 64-bit thing, and we, like, honestly, we kind of kept it alive. I did a Christmas update within like 2 months, I think, of releasing, and the numbers just weren't there to justify. Like, yes, I could have spent 6 months trying to like figure out like how to increase engagement, but they were so low. They were like lower than you want them to be to dedicate more time to it, because like time is money, right? And it was converting so poorly that like the most likely scenario would have been that I would just have wasted 6 more months of my life. It was a bummer because I loved that game. Like, and the thing it did, it like totally built my confidence. Like I could say, like, me as a person from start to finish can create a fully releasable, non-crashy, wacky mobile game with a shit ton of content. I can work with freelancers, and I have relationships with platforms and all that stuff. So like it was totally worth it. It's just that like I feel like the industry, part of the problem with success bias and just the industry in general is like we only talk about like financial success, but like it was absolutely successful for me as a person. And it was just weird that like the only metric we have is like did it make you wealthy?
Are you rich now? No. No,
exactly.
It's you're absolutely right. Like that's the personal growth that comes with projects is like so much an unspoken factor that like we grew at everything so much through the 6 years I spent developing Sometimes Always Monsters, and like we released a DLC recently. I completely share the exact same experience where we released this DLC for the game. We spend X amount on it, and it makes like X divided by like 20 in terms of like profit, and it's like, goddamn, there's like a small contingent of people who are like asking for more DLCs on the game, and it's really hard to like, it's really hard for me to say no because I'm so like emotionally attached to the project, and like I'm gonna keep updating this game like for free until I die, but like
forever.
In terms of like
this is my dwarf fortress.
Yeah, like in terms of like development that like costs money, outside of my time, it's like pretty unlikely to happen unless like some crazy thing happens. And that's where I might disagree with you in terms of the worthwhileness, and it could be a delusion of mine, but the idea that like a game can like, if you just stick with it, like eventually the culture will catch it, You know, I don't know if that's necessarily accurate, but it's something that I really like to believe.
Well, I think if you're the type of person who wants to do that or is doing that for whatever reason, you have to believe it.
Yeah.
But I think I personally am like a bit cynical about it in the sense of like there are just things that might never get there, and that's even more crushing than somebody doing a thing, releasing the thing fails, and they go do something else. I think it's way more crushing to sort of like be sort of enslaved to it if you actually care about that like hypothetical payoff. You know what I mean? Like it's totally fine to do something that doesn't financially convert if you can stay alive, stay afloat somehow.
Right.
That's super legit, right? Like you please don't like make me sound like making money is the only thing that matters. It's more like the thing that I find really sad is seeing people work towards that goal and like kind of just like sit below the line where that actually has a chance of happening, kind of. And I mean, I can't think of anybody specifically or anything, just more like that's my fear, right? Like I could with Don't Trip spend 6 months and then make 4 months of salary. So I'm only 2 months extra down the shitter, and then spend another 6 months, and maybe it'll make 5 months. I'm still 1 month down. You know what I mean? Like if I'm thinking about just like breaking even on like living costs or whatever, it still means that I worked my ass off for 9 months or for 12 months to have 9 months of minimum wage salary or whatever. Like it's just, I think honestly that's like you said way at the beginning, nobody makes any money streaming. I think that's the really thing that I find. I think that's a bubble for sure of like YouTubers and streamers, of like everybody sees that like pull and that goal of like one day this is just going to be like sustainable. But I think the reality is that it a lot of people will never get there and will maybe be disillusioned. I hope not. I hope that this is common knowledge by now. But thinking about like putting myself in a situation like that is like really scary to me. Like I would much rather immediately move on to a new project and like kind of don't think about sunk cost and you know, Don't Trip also was easy to say goodbye to because I wasn't emotionally involved with it. Like my only thing that I cared about is like I want to make people do a dumb thing with their phone. That will make me happy. I want to see GIFs and YouTube videos of people doing like boopty 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 boop, and like everything else was just a way to try to make that as like a part of my career, and that part of it like worked in the sense, again, I learned a lot, got a crazy amount of experience and contacts from it, and I'm pretty sure Nuts would never have happened if Don't Trip hadn't happened. If I couldn't point to like I made like one of the most experimental, like in terms of input mechanics, games of that year, and it actually had 4.5 stars after 500,000 downloads. Like screw the fact that it didn't convert to money. Like yes, I'm don't let me come up with a business model, but like I can make a Unity game that does weird shit and doesn't crash, right? So give me money to make another one, and you deal with the business model, Mr. Publisher, or you know, Mr. Platform. Like that was kind of my pitch after Don't Trip, and how I was able to like bounce back from it. And I'm so happy I did that and didn't sort of like, if I only a little bit more of, you know, what if there's a 14th level?
Right. And I mean, it's still really easy to forget how. I mean, I'm guilty of this at various points, but like how early we are in the career still, right? I can still count the number of games I've shipped on one hand. Like that is not. We're nowhere. We're beginning, and it's like so easy to lose focus of that when you're like amid the project. You're like, this is it. This is the game. This is the one. And it's the be all end all, and it's like so self-defining that it like can be a little destructive. He's either very contemplative or we have lost him. Just mass produce, you baby. Oh no, hold on, guys. I'm gonna. Oh, there we go. Okay, he's back.
I can still hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You were like frozen for like a solid like 45 seconds there.
Yeah.
You're here. You're good.
Yeah, I'm back. I was going to say something really funny.
Oh, it's just tragic.
Yes.
So one thing I'm very curious about. You mentioned that like with Nuts, trying to get your parents to play it was like insanely difficult, or like is nearly impossible. How was their experience with Don't Trip?
Oh, so actually pretty par for the course. I showed it to my mom after probably already having worked on it for like months. It's like, this is my job now. I'm being paid to do this, and like maybe people will like it. And my mom did the thing. She like went through the tutorial, like boop de boop. Oh, I'm supposed to do. Oh, wow, so clever. Oh, my son is a genius. And then 2 minutes later, she gave me the phone back.
But she was able to experience it as opposed to the first person problem.
It's more accessible than, I think, honestly, like for first person games are accessible if any of them would bother to have a tutorial, but nobody tutorializes first person controls anymore.
Right.
Which I guess that's a weird thing as well, right? Like people tutorialize like literally anything, but nobody like takes the time to sit you down and be like, all right, just move the mouse and look at the 3 targets. Okay, cool, you did it. Now walk through the little maze. Anyway.
Yeah, I haven't done that since like.
The thing I wanted to say, I wanted to hijack the conversation and just talk about what you did before you were a game developer. Because I was a bartender 10 years ago.
Right. Me, I was a game journalist.
Right.
And then I hated that. I hated writing about all these cool things other people were doing. And,
I think that's also an experience a lot of other journalists have gone through.
Yeah. So then I was a freelancer, and then I like kind of like snapped and like started doing this like journalism project where like I'd hitchhike around North America to visit game developers and like do interviews.
Oh, awesome.
And I did that for like almost a year, and then along the way I had the idea for ASM, and I met Nigel in a bar, and then I came home and I started working on a prototype with Jake. And like
that was
2012, 2013,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and then the rest of my life just down the drain. Here we go. Here we are now.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. Like I'm in hopefully the final stretch of Nuts, and almost no matter what, I'm super excited about what comes after. Like I hope I get to bring it out to a bunch of platforms, but I also, like we had a conversation today, like we're a little bit of a tight spot when it comes to time left, money left, and work left to do. Like the numbers don't really make sense at the moment, but we just gotta keep going. And we're just like, oh, do we try to get more time? Do we try to get more money? Do we cut stuff? And like the idea of throwing more time into the project is like really appealing, right? Because it feels like it makes all the problems go away. But I'm really like, the older I get, I'm 34. The older I get, the more I like really start to understand the concept of opportunity cost of like literally when you decide to work on something, that means you can't work on something else. And I was kind of like, that's like a bullshit argument old people make. But I am the old people now.
It's the thing I will say about like putting more time in it, like, look, I'm a person who literally added like on a day, I said 4 more years, and you know we extended our game development cycle by a whole 4 years, and
wow,
and we were still kind of like parts of it were scrambling at the end. It doesn't matter how much time, like you can give yourself that like 3 extra months to and you'll still be in this feeling that feeling you have, you know, now
it's a fake idea.
It's going to be there still, because I mean, not to get too metaphysical about things, but like releasing game is not so much about like the code or the art or the marketing or whatever. It's about like this like process that you as a human, as a perceiving entity are going through in order to like successfully accept that the game is now out and in existence, and it is in the past tense of your, you know, you're in this new stage of life. And it's not like that can ever come easy, because it's part of evolution as a conscious entity. Like you can't just like, I'm envious of the robot people who can just like, here's my game, bye, like that's it. No, it's got to be this like distress emotional experience, and you're gonna have that no matter what, because you give yourself those 2 extra months, you're gonna like solve all the problems you see now, and then you're gonna see a bunch more, like, or you're gonna make some more fucking problems. Like, it's the way it has to go. You have to be in pain in the release. I'm sorry.
But one of my friends, I used to have a company called Glitchnap in my first couple of games in Denmark, and our main designer there, Jonas, he would always say, it's not done, like the work isn't done until I hate myself. Like, it's not done when it's good, it's done when I hate myself. And like, it was, you know, I never internalized that, thank God. Like, I don't really think about it that way, but I do recognize the fact that like it is kind of never finished, and oftentimes, you know, if you're not careful, actually, you will just stop when you just like can't anymore. And actually, what you should do is like try to have as part of your method finding an endpoint, like actually finding, you know, like deciding, scoping down until you can actually say, okay, I've now finalized this scope. It's maybe a scoped down version of the original, but it's not just whatever garbage I had before I had a burnout. Like, it's actually like a finished, finite thing, a version of the design that fits within budget, within time, and is respectful of me as a person. Yeah. What if I already hate myself? Is the work still done? Yeah, you don't even have to start. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat.
Yeah, no, that's good. Minty just finished her first game in one of our game jams, and like, honestly, pretty
congratulations.
Damn, and Escobanzo, like, I'm sorry to like lay that on you, homie, but that's the way it's gotta be. If you care about the project, like, actually, like, shipping Karen, I don't know what the hell what that was. Like, that thing just came out of nowhere, and I was like completely apathetic about it the entire way through development. I was just like, yeah, whatever, here we go, we're just making this stupid thing, la 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 la. and then we just hit ship, and I was like, okay, cool, bye. No bugs, like nothing wrong. Everything was fine, and people love it. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't think I can ever do that again. I don't think it's replicable.
No, I mean, some things, the technologies are like a little bit stabilizing as well, right? Like, I feel like the sort of crashy, buggy things, it's not that they're like completely a thing of the past, but it is possible. It used to just like not be possible to release something and it just works. Right. And I feel like I've heard other people have that experience, especially with like small sort of like spin-off projects or like little experimental stuff. Just kind of, it just kind of works. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, Don't Trip, honestly, I was surprised as well, but I think it had like, at some point there was some obscene number of like, on like 200,000 downloads, it had 6 crashes. Are you kidding me? That's wild. That's my resume right there.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very impressive feat.
I don't know, those numbers were made up, but it was like a number that I was kind of like.
He's been sent to the shadow realm. That's what happens when you make up numbers.
No,
you're back. You're back. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. But okay, so let's get back on nuts for a second.
Sure.
Do we have a target? Is it when we can play? When can we find out more?
It's definitely 2021, and it is probably very early. I don't have an actual date.
But we don't make people commit to things on the show.
No, it's fine. But yeah, I'm gonna be. The game just kind of has to be done, I would say, before Christmas, and then we have some time to sort out all the other stuff. But oh my god, my computer is just grinding to a halt. That might be why we're losing connection sometimes. I'm gonna close some shit down. Yeah. So 2021, you'll get to play Nuts. There is, however, a Steam demo live, I think, right now.
Okay. Is that? Let me. I posted the link earlier. Here we go. Let me post that back up.
Yeah.
It's on my wish list. There is. I cannot find the demo.
And there will be a demo in the Steam Festival, which is coming up in 2-3 weeks. There's going to be another Steam Festival.
Right.
We had one in the last Steam Festival, and then I was interviewed on the Twitch's like official gaming channel like a few weeks ago, and then we posted a demo for a while. As a part of that, that was an experience, man. Like being interviewed on a Twitch channel that has like 50,000 viewers.
Yeah.
Literally, yeah, it was super high like production value. There was like people, there was like a whole back channel, people talking about like, oh, he's gonna ask this question now, and like, oh, you have 30 seconds to talk about this. And I was just like, try to be spontaneous. I was like, don't get me wrong, like I appreciate being invited to something like that, but like, oh my god, the pressure.
Right, this show is better. I mean, we can be
way better.
Thank you. All right, there we go.
Yeah. It was way more fun. Or this is way more fun. But the most of the same thing happened. I thought like, oh, this is gonna be cool. Like I'm gonna like pander to the gamers or whatever. And I set up a whole thing where I had like the squirrel from the game actually come into my webcam and like give me a kiss, and I would like try to like sit here for a little while, look at me, and I would go like, what? And I was gonna be like, oh, it's gonna be amazing, and people are gonna, and I was gonna like make it happen like once, so that people would like maybe see it, but then like if people missed it, they would just like only hear about it. It was like I had this whole like idea for like a almost like ARG or whatever. While I was waiting to go on, I had 30 seconds. For some reason, the OBS webcam started using 99% of my CPU, and just like the like browser things, like everything just starts like chunking down. My mouse starts going like ka-chunk, 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 and literally my headphones are like, "All right, we're going live. Joon, you're going on right now." It's like, oh fuck! I literally had to like reboot twice, and luckily managed to get into the It was that high production value that they actually had the hosts. They could just stall. But so happy that they didn't cut me off. But that was probably the most stressed I've been in any live stream.
Betrayed by technology.
Oh, terrible. By my own ambitions of putting squirrels in everything.
Quality content. Oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah. But yeah, there'll be a demo for the next Steam Festival.
Good. I mean, because I'm excited. We actually never really talked about what else is in the what new stuff you've added in the game since. I think we were gonna start talking about that, but then we got wildly sidetracked.
Yeah, no worries. The thing I really wanted, like Firewatch is probably one of my favorite games, at least in vaguely the Nuts genre. Just like being in this forest, feeling this like openness, but also it bums me out that you can't go kind of everywhere, and you also don't really have anything to do, so you can't like really just like be in Firewatch without being in the like super stressful moment with Delilah and like just and having like being in the story, right? So I tried to like with Nuts break out a little bit of that. Like the gameplay, the game design works really well in a forest, but also wouldn't it be awesome if you also have like something to do there, right? Like it kind of always I felt kind of like somewhere between a nature photographer and a scientist, and started kind of like brainstorming like what would a story based on that be. And then when I actually got the game off the ground, I kind of just like started putting out some feelers to people in the indie scene that I know from events like Amaze and even like, was thinking if any of them I actually met in South Africa, but I'm not sure. But like I could easily have. Which ended up being Paul Clarisou, who is an amazing like visual artist and 3D artist who made a bunch of really cool games. Char, who is a really good friend of mine and is an amazing writer. She actually wrote for Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3 before going indie, which is just what? She's writing the Nuts story now.
That's amazing. I just have to gush over Divinity for a second. I literally play it every single week. It's an amazing game. Like, holy
Have you
crap.
heard of the Way of the Acorn?
The Way of the Acorn, no.
There's a squirrel religion in Divinity Original Sin that the writer of Nuts worked on.
Okay, all right. We're going to hunt this down. I will literally be playing the game tomorrow, so
That's a real thing. So I've never played it. It's one of those games where I'm like just terrified that I will like it too much.
You will love it. It's so good. It's so good.
It's one of those things where people talk about like I'll sleep when I'm old. I'm like I'll play Divinity. I'll sleep now. I'll play Divinity Original Sin when I'm old. It's a Belgian studio as well. But yeah, so she's super cool. I heard about her like going indie and looking for projects. She's working on us. Then I met Almut, who's a sound designer and a Foley artist. So the sound and music is also really, really cool. And then turns out one of my best friends here in Iceland is an amazing level designer. So and developer. And so we assembled this team for a while, I was kind of flirting with the idea of making like a really long like simulator game where you spend like maybe like hours in each part of the forest and there's like a whole bunch of tasks to do. And it turned out to be just completely, like, wildly out of scope. And started just, like, shaving off edges and thinking, like, okay, what is this really about? What is this really about? And it ended up that, like, the story became actually, like, really precious to me. And I really want to tell a story, but the main way that you interact with the story is by following squirrels through forests and other areas. And that's a weird story to write, but I wouldn't. There's so many things in Nuts where I feel like because we're innovating so hard that there's kind of no way to do it wrong.
So I'm stalking squirrels with cameras, and through that learning a story that is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be pretty good. But the gameplay is proven. The story is hopefully also works. And the sound and graphics will be amazing. It's just the code that I write that's going to be bad. But no, it's so hard when you have like a relatively short game to not spoil stuff. But the thing that happens is that like there's the squirrels are like definitely up to something, which like as animals they kind of always look like they are. Like they're kind of like solitary rats. Like they're, they kind of just look like the only reason we think they're cute is because they have a fluffy tail. But really, if you look up a picture of a squirrel without a tail or with a shaved tail, they're just rats. But they're territorial and they're like shitty to each other. So they're just kind of like they're like less social rats. They're like libertarian rats. And so they're kind of like, what are they up to? What are they up to in their like little bunkers? Like what are they radical? Like what are they radical about? So it's a little bit like that, but I also quickly realized that like with this visual aesthetic we were going for, I can't like, this couldn't be like a silly game. This can't just be like a haha, the squirrels and they have names and they're like personified and they'll say curse words and whatever. Like that just like wouldn't fit. And I'm also maybe not really interested in making like a jokey comedy game. A lot of people like wanted it to go in that direction. They're like, oh, like the squirrels in Rick and Morty. It's, yeah, maybe. I instead started exploring with Char, like basically brainstormed together, got her involved like at the right time in the process that was still possible, and brainstormed on like what can you discover through this method that's actually happening, and there will be something cool to explore.
I'm excited for it. I mean, it's even just for the shakeup of like, it's always cool to get another first-person experience that's not just like bang bang shoot shoot, or please walk through this static environment and
right.
look at this environment art we've made.
Or exactly, and maybe there's some like cool voiceover, and maybe there's even like you can decide to go left or right. But like in Nuts, there actually is like a full game in there. Like following the squirrels is like pretty fun and challenging at times to optimize it. And then whenever you like actually succeed at a mission, you get like the next bit of the story in the way that you do in Portal or Half-Life as well. There's just like bits of gameplay, bits of story. Yeah. Shit, I was going to say something else.
That's cool. Right on, man. So I guess everybody pay attention to the next Steam Game Festival that's happening. There seems to be one every couple of months now, so it's got to be right around the corner.
It's a whole other thing.
Keep your eyes open for Nuts. I've dropped the link several times in the chat here. I'm going to drop it again. Add it to your wish list. Check out the trailer. And check out the demo when it's available. I'm curious. I mean, I want to ask a million like questions about like the game festival demos and like how those track and everything. But like metrics are
yeah. Did you see that Simon Carlos survey thing?
No.
So Simon Carlos runs. If I'm assuming part of your audience is game developers, otherwise we should do this in private. But Simon Carlos runs a mailing list called the Discoverability Now, I think, mailing list. Simon Carlos used to. I just because I read the Among Us article recently, like 2 days ago. So super worthwhile, both like Simon Carlos as a person and his mailing list worthwhile to follow. He did after the first Steam Festival together with Chris Zukowski a survey of I think like 50 or something games that were in the Steam Festival, and it's got a bunch of numbers of like how many wishlists did you get out of it and other engagements, and we were somewhere above, like slightly above average. It felt like games that already had like an audience would just continue to get an audience, or like that they would be like higher. More likely to be featured and stuff, which is like,
I mean, that's usually
it's a bad system, but also like it's really hard to come up with a better system. Like,
right, like the algorithm
Steam is just like kind of trying a bunch of things that's favorite the ones that have already been favored before. But also there's definitely like a human factor there, where like if enough people like something, it will get to the top, and then even more people will like it. And if nobody likes something, that sucks. And Nuts has been doing okay. Like it's been pretty slow since the festival, but also like we haven't put out much. I honestly I have no idea what to expect. Like there's people who look at our game and they're just kind of like, I get nauseous by just looking at screenshots. Like, okay, well, maybe don't play it. But then there's people who are like, we have some dedicated followers and definitely like some wish lists, and a bunch of like YouTube Let's Plays were super fun to see. Like the demo was downloaded a couple thousand times during the Steam Festival, so that was pretty encouraging, and few crashes. I don't actually know how good Steam is at reporting crashes, but few people complained. Maybe they just didn't care.
Right. Well, I mean, you'll never know. But it's one of these things. I think we're all gonna have to get like used to adapting to this new game festival demo cycle, limited time demos, etc. I've just never had a game like ready in time or like in the appropriate time. Like I seem to be always just off of the windows or whatever. But that's life.
It is definitely like a good way to start. Like I think for us, like, because we announced it at the last Steam Festival, and it was was good for us because we got into like a couple of showcases. There was like a PC Gamer article that listed us first, which was wild, out of like 9,000 games. But so it was really good for us. But I heard from other people that they like had lined up a bunch of marketing stuff and then launched during the Steam Festival and just got drowned out. Like nobody, you know.
Yeah.
If you're not lucky in that moment, then it could actually be super detrimental because now you've just like launched to zero applause. Yeah. Because like there's so much else going on. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough out there. I don't. My coping mechanism, honestly, for the last year has been to have even lower expectations, and I'm pretty cynical usually anyway, and to just like take a big step back from a lot of stuff because, yeah, just I was like a little bit too deep into caring about the indie scene and like, you know, following a bunch of people like role models and stuff, and a lot of that stuff is really exhausting.
Yeah, no, you got to focus on your own growth, dude. That's where it's at.
Yeah, and on like honestly on stuff that is just like physically around you and people and family and all that stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Well,
what are you working on now? If before you cut me off.
Before I get so we did a game jam last weekend, and then literally this week I started a new game, which
wow.
It's like super early fundamentals. I've been streaming the development, so it's like no secret stuff, but like the best way I can explain the concept right now is like a 2-player Telltale.
Telltale. Oh, right, yeah.
Like Telltale games,
but
like
the Walking Dead games, and yeah.
Yeah, but like 2 players.
Okay, cool.
Right. That's kind of...
that's in a specific setting, or are you just like experimenting with the mechanics right now?
I've got the mechanics. I've kind of got the setting and everything. Like it's, oh my god, to get into like what the setting and the storyline is, like it's like gonna take a long time.
Yeah, a whole other
conversation.
I'll definitely check it out. What's it called? Does it have a name yet?
No, I mean it doesn't. It's not. I haven't announced it or anything. It's just like literally.
Oh, man, you worked there for a whole week.
2 whole days this week. But
what's the Unity project called? Is it New Unity Project 27?
It's actually Game Maker. I have started,
of course, yeah.
I knew
that.
I don't know why. I know it's my first Game Maker. It's my first Game Maker game. I mean, I made a Game Maker jam on the weekend, and then or over the last week, and then this week I started on. What
is always sometimes monsters make?
RPG Maker VXAs.
For a split second, I thought you said Unreal. I was like, what?
I know.
RPG Maker. Wow.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. No, and then actually today we were mucking around with the Unity project you're familiar with. I've got like whole Twitch integration into it now, so that like the chat can drop like rather than having to do email, it's like just the chat drops a link to like YouTube videos or images, and it just like populates, and that's kind of the jam. And like today we got it functional where people can actually throw money at it, and then it does something, which is I made a ton of money today beta testing this with the community. So good.
Nice.
Just ripping them off for their bits on my buggy shit.
Nice.
But that's the jam.
That's awesome.
I do that every Thursday, and then every Friday, Saturday, Sunday I keep updating Sometimes Always Monsters, and that's it. Tuesday, Wednesdays
you keep updating it.
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
It's been 6 months,
Badass.
7 months.
Oh, you mean wait, Sometimes Always Monsters, not Always Sometimes Monsters.
No, we don't touch that. That's a masterpiece. It's a timeless masterpiece, and we get yelled at for even coming near it again. Well, that's that.
Yeah,
that's what I've been up to. Yeah, we haven't seen each other since, I guess, Berlin 2017, 2018.
When you were in VR most of the time.
2017.
I think we sat outside for a bit as well. Yeah.
Good times.
Wait, but no, because must have been 18, because it was after I met you in South Africa. releasing Don't Trip,
couldn't have been 18. Maybe it was 16.
I don't remember.
Anyway.
It all bleeds together. This spring was really wild because it was the first time I didn't go to GDC and Amaze in like 6 years.
Yeah, this year's been hard. I know what you mean. I was supposed to go to Nordic and didn't end up getting to do. But there's always next year.
There's always post-COVID one day.
One day. It's coming.
It was super good to hear from you, and
likewise.
we should do this again sometimes.
We can chat a bit more off stream, but I think I should wrap it up there and let them go.
Too.
Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow 1 to 5. We'll be doing sometimes always monsters update. Actually, Minty, I think it's your NPC cameo time, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken, we're going to do that tomorrow, and then pleasure having you. Anything you want to say to everybody before we get gone?
No, just take care, hang in there, stay safe, take breaks, focus on your family or yourself. Don't burn out, it's not worth it.
Right on. Cool. I'm going to throw you guys on the thanks for watching, and then I'll send you to Shin Rays, who there's literally nobody playing any of our games or working right now, so I'll send you to Shin Rays, who had a really awesome Karen stream the other day. Send him a lot of love and Karen emotes. Catch you guys later. Bye.